Springfield Board of Mayor and Aldermen, meeting's called to order. Please stand and we'll say the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I want to welcome everyone here to our meeting tonight. And I also want to introduce our new Assistant City Manager, Ms. Candace Tillman. She's not a new face to the City of Springfield. She's been with us for a while now, so congratulations. Mr. Ryan Martin's hired her as the assistant. Guess you got another job to fill.
That's right.
Okay, 1.2, the approval of the minutes for the regular meeting of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen held on February 23rd, 2021. Motion made by Vice Mayor Harris and a second made by Alderman Hubbard. Are there any corrections? Ready for a vote. Anyone like to change their vote? Oh, gee. Okay. Please record the votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. We will now start our public hearings. If you're here for the public hearing, please come to the mic and state your name and you have 2 minutes to speak. Our first public hearing is Ordinance 21-01, an ordinance amending the fiscal year 2021 annual budget for the City of Springfield by amending certain general funds and utility funds operating budgets. Would anyone like to speak? Please come to the mic. If no one would like to speak, the public hearing is closed. Public hearing number 2. Ordinance 21-02, ordinance establishing the schedule of fees for the City of Springfield cemeteries by rescinding Ordinance 13-07 in its entirety and substituting a new schedule of fees. The public hearing is now open. Please come to the mic. If no one would like to speak, the public hearing is closed. Public hearing number 3. Resolution 21-09, a resolution annexing approximately 15.3 acres of property owned by Clay Jones Construction, LLC, located in the 9th Civil District, including a portion of a right-of-way of Wallace Road that's approximately 0.46 acres. Public hearing is now open if you would like to speak. If no one would like to speak, the public hearing is closed. Public hearing number 4, Resolution 21-10, a resolution annexing approximately 5 acres of property owned by Equity Trust Company, located in the 9th Civil District, including a portion of the right-of-way of Laura Road, approximately 0.17 acres. If you would like to speak, please come to the mic. If no one would like to speak, the public hearing is closed. 1.4, a presentation from Griggs and Maloney on the findings of the wastewater optimist study. Mr. Ryan Maloney is here and Mr. Roger Morris, and Mr. Roger Morris is coming to the mic. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Don't worry about the notebook.
Notebook?
These are my notes. Okay. The city entered into an agreement with us to look at an optimization evaluation of the existing wastewater treatment plant in January a year ago. We've spent that time looking under stuff, in stuff, around stuff. I'm sorry to say we found no hidden treasure, okay, and no lost dogs. Okay. What we did find was that the facility that you have is about 38 years old. Okay. It is located to the west, photo behind me. It has been in service for 38 years. It has had one major upgrade when this portion, which is the sludge handling facility, the press and whatnot, was put in service in 1997. In 2020, we replaced the screen Okay, I'm not going to get into the details about that, okay? And we replaced the disinfection system, which is the ultraviolet. All right, other than that, it's all original equipment, okay? Been in there since, we think, 1984, okay? There's some question whether it's late 84, early 84, doesn't matter. It's a long time ago. Our instruction in what we were to look at is we were to look at the treatment process, that is what's called the aeration process, that's what treats the wastewater. We're looking at the digestion system, which treats the waste from the aeration process, and to look at the controls and the instrumentation. And we did. And we have a report, and it details each piece that we looked at, okay? Won't bore you with those details, okay? Well, we also were tasked with, can this facility have its life extended? That was a big question. The answer is probably. Okay? And I say probably because in order to do that, you're gonna have to do a lot of stuff. And so you have a handout from us that came to you, and we, in that process, identified 4 phases of things that can be done. One of the ground rules for the preparing of the 4 phases was, can this be done with grant money? Or can this be done with money that would be normally available within our budget? You know? And so we structured it that way, okay? Last year, the city applied for a CGDB, Community Development Block Grant, to do the first phase, which is to replace the return activated sludge system and also install a pump station so that we can cut down on record keeping, stuff like that. You did not get the grant, but you did put money in the budget, and that currently is in its design stage, okay? This year, the city is submitting an application for phase 2, which is to replace the blowers. Easiest way to explain that is the heart of your system. That's the air, okay? No air, doesn't work. Those blowers have been in service for 38 years. They've been replaced, rebuilt, replaced, rebuilt, replaced, rebuilt, okay? They're tired and they're undersized for today's permit limits. You have a permit from the state, which is different from the permit you had in 1984. That cost is approximately $1 million. We've rounded it to $1 million. 630 is in the grant application. Your share is the difference. There is some planning involved, like we did on the return activated sludge. If it doesn't work, it'll still be in the budget, but it's something you got to do. Phase 3 of the evaluation is upgrading the digester, the digestion system. Currently is operating at 45% of the plant's capacity and creates issues. Issues not only in being able to dispose of the sludge, which creates cost, but also it creates ammonia because it doesn't properly aerate, doesn't properly digest, and that ammonia comes back into the aeration process. And by the way, your permit is permitted for ammonia. So the less ammonia you have, the better you're going to be as far as being in your compliance with your permit. From 2016 through 2019, the average for your ammonia on a monthly basis, according to the state of Tennessee, which is in your permit, was 2.3 milligrams per liter. Your permit is 2. Okay? That's why we have a lot of discussions with the state folks, okay? Your current permit is still 2, but they're looking to make it 1. That'll be happening possibly in 2024 at your next permit. The current facility in its current stage won't make that, okay? So phase 3 works on the digesters, gets the digesters up to snuff, allows you to create good sludge to be able to dispose of good sludge. Phase 4 is, so we kind of fix up the plant, but we haven't increased the capacity of the plant. Okay? If you spend that money, you would be able to increase potentially the capacity of the plant from 3.44 million gallons a day to maybe 5. I say maybe because we have to deal with the state. Okay? Okay. So could be up to 5. In other words, maybe 1.5 million gallons a day more. All right? But you'll still have a 38-year-old plant. And you'll still have the issues. So even if you spend all that money to upgrade that facility, you're still going to have an old plant. And you'll still have old things in the plant that may break down in the 10 to 15 years that we were tasked. Can you make it last that much longer? The limiting factor in this whole facility is not the equipment, it's the concrete. The concrete's been out there. If the plant went in service in '84, that concrete was poured maybe in '82, maybe '83, okay? So it's at least a year, maybe 2 years older than when the plant went into service. All right. Typical life on concrete, according to EPA, is 30 to 50 years. According to rural development, it's 30 to 60 years, okay? Concrete is great stuff until it fails. And once it fails, fixing it is nigh unto impossible. It's hard, it's expensive, and it usually doesn't work, okay? So, in our last meeting with the city staff, when we went over this stuff, we were asked, well, what do you think about replacing with what can we do? And we said, well, industry standards, numbers. A portion of the facility could be saved. The sludge building, okay? The lab building, okay? The garage buildings and stuff like that. The rest of it really would not be salvageable, okay? For a number of reasons that you're not interested in, but they're there. If you are interested, we'll let you know. And build a facility there that would allow you to expand. You have one limitation in expanding your facility, and it's a hydraulic limitation, and it has nothing to do with you folks. It has all to do with the 7-year, 10-day low flow of Sulphur Fork and Car Creek. And in order to get the maximum capacity, which would be about 7 million gallons a day, about double what you have, we would have to run a pipe down here to the fork and discharge. We have discussed that with the state, and they said, yeah. And they actually did the runoff calculations and the flow rate calculations when they went through the other permit and put that in the justification to allow us to stay at 2 on ammonia till 2024. Okay? So there's been a lot of cooperation and a lot of forethought that's gone in there. So that's what we found in a nutshell. Okay? The people down there have done an excellent job of doing what they can with what they got. And they're really great folks, and we had enjoyed working with them. And I'll take any questions you got.
Okay. Questions?
Are we currently doing phase 1?
It's in the design phase. Phase 1 is, we applied for the CDBG last year and did not get that, and so it's in the design phase now. So if no, because that's something, Roger, that has to be done anyway, right?
Well, no.
Unless we replace
If you decide to replace the facility, phases 1, 2, 3, and 4 can stop. Okay? Portions of 3 and portions of 4 would roll into the new design, but you do not need to do the return activated sludge stuff, and you do not need to do the little pump station.
So the idea was next week, with this being timely, we would discuss this matter and kind of where we want to go with this and talk about funding and options and all of those things.
Okay. Other questions? Yes, sir.
So you said the estimated range for replacing this is 25 million, replacing everything?
25 to 35. I used an industry standard number as a calculator. The number is so many dollars per gallon per plant capacity. So if you choose a 5 million gallon capacity, you take that number and you multiply it and you get 25. If you take that same number and you multiply it times 7, you get 35, okay? It's just a range. What it actually will cost is the city actually decides what it wants to put out there, keeping in mind that you're gonna be looking at another 35 years. Okay, so you gotta think ahead, okay, as to what's gonna be. The folks that did this plant did a really good job. Okay, it lasted a long time, and it's still operable.
Okay? Yes, sir?
So what I was understanding Ryan saying, we're going to discuss in some planning session?
Yes.
So there's really no need to go over it right now.
No, I mean, you all are free to do what you'd
I
like
mean,
to.
I understand that, but
Yeah.
it's kind of doubling up what we
Yeah,
can do.
we'll be able to have a discussion with numbers and figures and options next week. Griggs and Maloney is just presenting their findings of the optimization study that they did. Roger, one last thing is, how long would that extend the life of the plant? I think you may have mentioned that. 35 years for a new plant, but how long would
This
phases 1, 2, 3, and 4?
May extend it as much as 15 years.
Okay.
Okay?
In these 4 phases, you're looking at close to $6 million
You're looking at $13 million for those 4
to
phases.
maybe get 15 more years.
Correct. Or 25 to 35 million for a new plant.
That's the thing we'll have to discuss next week, because, I mean, we all know that we have to do something because of the growth that's coming.
I mean, you could still spend this 13 million and you may not get 15 years.
Correct.
Right.
And you could salvage, I think Mr. Moore said, we could salvage a few of those things, some of those parts and pieces, depending on when we built the new plant. So all of that 13 wouldn't be lost, but it would be a gamble. I mean,
A large portion of that 13 would be lost.
yeah.
Okay?
So was the grant applied for again that was denied first time?
That was a $630,000 CDBG grant that was denied. We've applied again this year for phase 2. So if next week we talk about it and you all kind of give us the nod to go on and maybe look at, if you say, hey, continue on where you're going with phase 1, 2, 3, and 4, that's what we will do. Phase 1's already in the design phase. We've already applied for the CDBG for phase 2. We'll just continue on that path. If you say, hey, put the brakes on, let's look at a new plant, we'll go and do that research and bring you back those numbers also.
But if we said do phase 1, 2, 3, and 4, what time frame would it take to complete that?
Depending on how you choose to fund it, okay? And I'm going to use the scenario that we used in the development of the report. A grant this year, a grant next year, a grant the following year. We did apply for an EDA grant for the digester side, and that was denied as well, okay? So the one is being done out of current funding. If the CGDB grant does not get approved this year, it's my understanding that that will be worked into the budget, okay? And so that will proceed, but that's so much this year, so much next year, so it kind of tags up. It could take you 4 or 5 years to finish phase 1, 2, 3, and 4, depending on how you choose to fund it. You can build a new plant in less time than that, depending on
Those
how
4
you
to 5 years that you're talking about, and the additional 15, is that at the completion of that, or is those 4 or 5
That's all part of
included
it.
in that 15?
The 15 is part of that 4 or 5 years, because we're talking about the concrete.
Right.
So we can get all done, and within 10 years, you may have to be doing it again. That's what we were tasked to kind of come up with these limits, okay?
And as you know, we'll have to talk about how we're going to make this work, if we're going, whichever phase if we're going to do that, or we're going to totally build and see where the funding's coming from.
Totally
Because
build would take how long?
The total build started with design at this point, and that would obviously mean you're going to be doing some sort of financing. You could have the project pretty much finished by the end of this permit cycle, December of '24.
Okay.
That's kind of the goal, is try to get that before the new permit cycle.
Because
To get
What's the
something,
reason, I mean, we just didn't get the grant, or is there a reason it's being denied, or?
we didn't get it. CDBG's competitive. We got one 2 years ago, so we didn't get the EDA grant either. And we thought we were going to get that one. We were actually really confident that we would get that one and didn't get that one. And I'm not sure what our
These
prospects are.
State or federal grants?
Federal.
A lot of people gunning for that money. Mr. Hubbard?
Yeah, with our growth spurt that we're having, the new facility sounds like the best remedy. We're growing. We talk about building all these new homes and stuff. We know people are coming this way. So the new facility, we may have to really look at it.
We will, but we remember, it all has to come out of that fund.
I know.
It's an enterprise fund. I mean, these are all great things that we've got to talk about next week.
Yeah.
It's going to be some tough decisions. Yes.
What did you say as far as the two creeks now and the 5,000 to 7,000?
The permitting process that the state uses to give you a capacity, how big of a plant can you put in, okay, that they'll allow you to put in, is regulated by a number that's called the 7-year, 10-day low flow in the stream. That's basically really dry weather, okay? And you can only be a percentage of that flow before then the stream is not the stream, it's your discharge. See? And so at this point, the 7-year, 10-day low flow of the two combined streams is around 7 million gallons a day. They have this giant Ouija board. That's how they figure it out, okay? All right, it's all magic. All right? I mean, that's just the way it goes. But that's the number that they use as a very critical number, okay? We discussed with them already about some of the phases and even some of the expansion up to 5 MGD. And the answer, of course, is we go from this point where we're discharging, we put in 1,200 feet of pipe and go down there where the two creeks meet. And then we can add the two creeks, you say. So that's very shortly, that's how that works.
But that 7 is the maximum.
Without getting into levels of extended treatment or alternate treatment, okay? Now, currently you're at 3.4, but you're actually operating, your average for the year was 2.7, okay? So you're at 78% of your current capacity. So jumping to a 7 is a big number, okay?
Okay, Ms. Arnold?
So if we were to go through with this 4-phase approach, you said it could take up to 5 years to complete. Is our concern, though, that we're not going to meet the next permit cycle and we're going to still be at a 2.3 and then they knock us down to a 1 and we haven't even completed all of the work for this 4-phase?
What we have heard from the state is that if we are in the process of doing these improvements, they're going to work with us. A scenario to what you just brought up would be that in 2024, they would issue us a new permit that would extend the 2 for maybe a year or 2 years, and then make it 1, okay? Which is what they wanted to do the last time, and we talked about it, okay? But you're not going to talk about it the next time.
No.
So that's the scenario there. They will work with us, but they're going to want to see results.
Right.
Well, I've been down there for one of those meetings. It's a little stressful.
And we're going to try to talk them out of it again, just for
Any other
You wear
questions?
Your good tie.
Any other questions while he's still at the mic? Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We got a lot of work to do next week. And I will also remind you, tomorrow is the TBA meeting right here in this room for Economic Development Best Practices Workshop that will start at 8:30. If you're able to attend, please come. We will move on to our legislative portion of our meeting. 2.1, discuss and possible take action on ordinance 21-01 on a second reading. Ordinance amending the fiscal year 2021's annual budget for the city of Springfield by amending certain general funds and utility funds operating budgets. We have a motion to discuss by Alderman Green and a second by Alderman Hubbard. Do we have questions on this second? Any questions? No questions? We're ready for a vote. Anyone like to change their vote? Please record the votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. 2.2, discuss and possible take action on ordinance 21-02 on a second reading. An ordinance establishing a schedule of fees for the City of Springfield cemeteries by rescinding ordinance 13-07 in its entirety and substituting a new schedule of fees as set forth in Exhibit A attached. We have a motion to discuss by Alderman Arnold and a second by Vice Mayor Harris. Any questions on this second reading? No questions? We're ready for a vote. Anyone like to change their vote? Please record the votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. 2.3, discuss and possible take action on ordinance 21-03 on a first reading. An ordinance establishing a new fee schedule and calculating methods for building permits. Ms. Brickles, will you please read this?
Ordinance 2103, an ordinance establishing a new fee schedule and calculation method for building permits. Whereas ordinance 0313 adopted and established a method and schedule for building permit fees, and whereas property values have increased substantially since the ordinance was adopted, which renders the fee schedule and method of calculation inconsistent with current market values, and whereas it has become necessary to develop a new building permit fee schedule and a method for calculating building permit fees for all buildings and structures permitted in accordance with the building code or the residential building code of the City of Springfield. And whereas the International Code Council has established a method of calculation for governmental entities to ensure equitable and consistent permitting fees, and whereas Article 4, Section 13 of the Charter of the City of Springfield requires that establishment of fees and charges be exercised by ordinance. Now therefore be it ordained by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen of Springfield, Tennessee as follows. Ordinance 0313 is hereby rescinded in its entirety and replaced by Ordinance 21-03, which establishes a new building permit fee schedule and method to calculate said fee. The building fee permit schedule for all buildings and structures permitted in accordance with the building code or the residential building code of the City of Springfield shall be as set forth in Exhibit A attached. The method for calculating the building permit fees in all buildings and structures permitted in accordance with the building code or the residential building code of the City of Springfield shall be set forth in Exhibit A and B attached. All ordinances, resolutions, and policies in conflict herewith shall be rescinded to the extent of the conflict only.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to discuss? Motion made by Alderman Hubbard and a second by Alderman Green. Our city manager, Mr. Ryan Martin.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, so this is brand new. Let me kind of give you the background on this. Our building permit method of calculation has not been updated since 2003. What we have noticed, really have begun to see it since we've seen the growth in a lot of different development coming through, is it's turned out to be an inequitable system. And I'll explain to you how that is. If you look at the ordinance from 2003, 03-13, the base number for the permit is $40 per square foot. So in 2003, that might have been a very fair number to be the base value. But what we have happening now, we've noticed this, Mr. Brewer and Mr. Fields, a codes administrator, have been researching this for several months to find out how other cities have resolved this issue. What we've noticed is that some builders will come in and they'll be very honest on their building permit, and they will value their permit at, if they're going to build a $400,000 house, and they put $400,000 on the value, and they pay it based on the schedule laid out in 03-13. Others know as long as it's above $40 per square foot, they can get away with it. So I'll give you an example, two examples that are currently, right now, in Oakland Farms Phase 3, I'm not going to list the address or embarrass any, because it's kind of widespread, the way this is going on, but we had a building permit for an 1,800 square foot house, roughly, that was valued at $148,000. That's how the contractor valued the project. So that's about $80 a square foot. That house is currently listed and under contract for $316,000. So they valued that project, they valued that house at less than half of what the house was listed for. We have other builders that aren't doing it that way, that they're coming in, if they're going to list the house for $316,000, they're going to value the project at $316,000. What we are proposing is not necessarily an increase in fees, it's a different method of calculation. The method of calculation that takes out the subjectivity, so there's no, you can't game the system, if you will. It takes out the subjectivity. It is the method established by the ICC that's recommended by the ICC, the International Code Council, which is the council that writes your building code, your fire code, mechanical code, gas code, and all of that. It's a method that a lot of cities have adopted, and it creates an equitable playing field. And so Mr. Brewer he can answer any questions about the method of calculation. There is a formula in here that he can explain far better than I can of how that's determined. But we'll be glad to take any questions you have.
But in what you just said, what they valued at 140 something, it's at 316. So how much is that builder saving by undervaluing?
Quite a bit.
A few $100s, I would say, easily. It depends on, each project's different. There's another one that was valued in Oakland Farms Phase 3 in that same area, valued at $159,300 on the building permit. It's under contract right now, listed at $307,000.
Or is the builder doing it purposely for more money in their pocket? I mean, basically that's what it is, isn't it?
It's a way, it's not wrong because it's allowed. And I think that's the best way. I mean, I don't want to accuse anybody of malicious intent because it's allowed. It's perfectly, what they're doing is perfectly legal because it's perfectly allowed. Our base structure is $40 a square foot. And we know that $40 a square foot left this area a long time ago.
I can tell you that's not the case anymore. Yes, Mr. Trotter.
So if you did a new recalculating system, this wouldn't punish the people that are up front with you now.
Correct.
I mean,
No.
just make it an even playing field for everyone.
It's going to make an even playing field for it. So there are some people that, I mean, depending on the project, that wouldn't pay, if they're coming in and being honest now, I won't say, if they're coming in valuing their project at market value now, then I don't think that they would necessarily pay any more. It's taking out that subjectivity for those that can't come in and value their 1,800 square foot house in Oakland Farms at
Someone that might
$148,000.
just quote.
Right.
Good questions. Mr. Hubbard.
How are we in alignment with our competing cities?
We haven't been. That's the reason they came up with this.
It's,
By studying the other cities. I mean, we've done this in other departments, just like the cemetery that we've had on the agenda. We've got several things that need to be looked at.
and this was one of them. This is something that we've certainly noticed an inequitable situation that's taken place. And Mr. Brewer can speak to the research that was done in other cities, if you don't mind him coming to the mic.
Well, I'm glad it's being done because, these old threats about all go somewhere else to deal, better shut it down.
Well, and I want to be clear, we're not just raising fees, building permits. That's not what the recommendation or the proposal is.
We're making it equal.
It's trying to eliminate what we would look at and say is abuse.
Mr. Hubbard, to very specifically answer your question, we looked at 1,700 square foot homes. Our permits are about $400 to $500 in that range. If we go the new method, it'd be $988. Per the 2008 appendix, it should be somewhere in the neighborhood. According to the appendix, it could be as high as $1,800. Town of Pleasant View presently charges $1,020 for a house that size. The city of Greenbrier presently charges $1,451 for a house that size. Robertson County charges $595. Hendersonville would charge $988, same as us, and the city of Millersville $1,275, Clarksville $561, Sumner County $766. Gallatin $629, and the city of Mount Juliet $793. So the average is around $981. So, we would be getting into an area where we are charging rates or permit fees that are equitable with the surrounding communities.
Okay. Other questions while he's at the mic? Mr. Harris.
What's the safety net on this new way that you're wanting to charge? I mean, if they've come in and declared before not the right value to get a lower fee, what's going to be the new safety?
The way the way we're recommending you calculate the permit is you take whatever square footage the house is, 1,700 square feet, and you multiply it by the ICC evaluation table as of August 20th. So based on the type of construction and the group of construction, it gives you a square foot value. So for a house, which would be an R3, 5B type of construction, we're looking at $123.68. So we would multiply that by the square footage. There's a multiplier within in the Appendix A, which is 0.0047. You multiply that number by that multiplier, and you would get the $988.02.
So the new way is based on square footage.
Right.
Where the old way is based on declared value.
Right.
Right.
It's changing the method.
And we're using the August 2020 table, and we've set up a 3-year cycle to update that table, and the availability to review our multiplier as well.
And that table comes from where?
International
Code
Code Council.
The standard. Mr. Trotter?
Do you think that new table would discourage any builders?
Not at all.
Okay.
It's most likely what they're using in other areas.
So they're familiar with it?
I think so. And I don't think, and as Mr. Brewer pointed out, the new permit fees for those that weren't maybe valuing their project according to market value are going to be in line with what they would pay anywhere else. So it's not that they could go anywhere else and build cheaper.
And the main thing about our permit, the permit calculation is based on the building of the house. It doesn't include the property value. So some of these houses, it gets us closer to where we are. Some of these houses are selling for a little bit more. They also have that $40,000 lot associated with them as well. So we're looking at the value of the home.
Okay. Other questions while he's still at the mic? No other questions? Thank you, Mr. Brewer.
Thank you, Mayor.
Any other discussion? No other discussion? We're ready for a vote. Anyone like to change their vote? Please record the votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. 2.4, discuss and possible take action on ordinance 21-04 on a first reading. An ordinance establishing a new permit fee schedule for mechanical and gas piping systems. Ms. Brickles, will you please read this?
Ordinance 21-04, an ordinance establishing a new permit fee schedule for mechanical and gas piping systems. Article 4, Section 13 of the Charter of the City of Springfield requires that the fixing of fees and charges be accomplished through legislative action, which must be exercised by ordinance. And whereas there is a necessity to establish an updated permit fee schedule for the City of Springfield Mechanical and Gas Code, and whereas TCA Section 68-120-118 requires municipal, county, and state-employed plumbing inspectors and mechanical inspectors to receive certification from the state fire marshal before enforcing applicable plumbing, mechanical, and fuel gas codes. Now therefore be it ordained by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen of Springfield, Tennessee as follows. Ordinance 13-02 and Ordinance 19-23 entitled City of Springfield Service Manual Policy section that reads fee or cost of service are hereby rescinded in their entirety and replaced by Ordinance 21-04 establishing a permit fee schedule for mechanical and gas piping systems to read as set forth in Exhibit A attached.
Thank you. A motion made by Alderman Hubbard and a second by Alderman Trotter to discuss. You would like to speak to this?
Sure, so this is very similar in nature. This is a change in method of calculation. It's exactly the same thing. This is something Mr. Brewer and Mr. Fields discovered when looking at the building permits, that we had the same issue with our mechanical permits. If you look at the previous ordinance, which was 13-02, in section 1 of that ordinance, it talks about $50 for the first $1,000 or fraction thereof of valuation of the installation plus $6 for each additional $1,000. What we're proposing to move to again is using an ICC table to move, if you look at section 1 in Exhibit A of the newly proposed ordinance, 10 cents per heated square foot, up to a maximum. So we've set a maximum after 2,000 square feet. Is that right, Mr. Brewer? That's it. So we've set a maximum, but it gets away from the subjective valuation method of their own install and makes it based on square footage.
Updating some of our...
Yes.
Antiquated ordinances.
Well, they haven't been looked at in a while. Any questions? Discussion? No discussion, we're ready for a vote. Anyone like to change their vote? Please record the votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. 2.5, discuss and possible take action on Resolution 21-09 on a second reading. A resolution annexing approximately 15.3 acres of property owned by Clay Jones Construction, LLC, located in the 9th Civil District, including a portion of right-of-way of Wallace Road for approximately .46 acres. Do we have a motion to discuss? Motion made by Alderman Gregg and a second by Alderman Hubbard. Any questions on the second reading? No questions? We're ready for a vote. Anyone like to change their vote? Please record the votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
2.6, discuss and possible take action on Resolution 21-10 on a second reading. A resolution annexing approximately 5 acres of property owned by the Equity Trust Company located in the 9th Civil District, including a portion of right-of-way of Laura Road of approximately .17 acres. Do we have a motion to discuss? Motion made by Alderman Green and a second by Alderman Gregg. Any discussion on the second reading? No discussion, we're ready for a vote. Anyone like to change their vote? Please record the votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. 2.7, discuss and possible take action on Resolution 21-14, a resolution declaring certain property surplus and authorizing the disposal of such properties. Motion made by Alderman Arnold, a second by Alderman Green to discuss. Questions? Any discussion or questions from your packet? Okay, we're ready for a vote. Anyone like to change their vote? Please record the votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. 2.8, discuss and possible take action on Resolution 21-15, a resolution accepting streets, right-of-ways, easements, and infrastructure improvements, as well as the maintenance bond for Section 4 of the Village Green at Springfield Subdivision, PUD. Motion made by Alderman Hubbard to discuss, second by Alderman Arnold. Discussion. Questions, please? No questions? We're ready for a vote. Anyone like to change their vote? Please record the votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
We'll move on to our administrative portion of our agenda. 3.1, discuss and possible take action on the adjustment of the retail electric rates to the Springfield Electric Department due to the wholesale fuel cost adjustments by the Tennessee Valley Authority. Do we have a motion to discuss? Motion made by Alderman Hubbard, a second by Alderman Green. Mr. Steve.
So, it's going up 3.5% based on all the cold weather we had last month.
Okay. We won't shoot the messenger, but we don't like it. But it's a pass-through. TVA tells us what they're going to do. Any discussion? No discussion, we're ready for a vote. Anyone like to change their vote? Please record the votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. I did enjoy the electricity while it was so cold, I will say that. 3.2, discuss and possible take action on the adjustments of the monthly gas rates of the Springfield Gas Department. Do we have a motion to discuss? Motion made by Vice Mayor Harris and a second by Alderman Green. Mr. Rue, you got good news?
I wish I did. The purchase gas adjustment's up 7.43%. A lot of that's due to exactly what happened with those storms. And
sure.
Unfortunately, the gas market kind of took a jump. But the good thing is we're close to our December rates where we were. So,
okay.
Could have been a lot worse.
You don't have to follow him. Just want to point that out. Any questions, discussion? We're ready for a vote. Anyone like to change their vote? Whoa, okay. Anyone like to change their vote? Please record the vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. 3.3, discuss and possible take action on the water tank attachment lease with Lightning Broadband. Do we have a motion to discuss? Motion made by Alderman Trotter, a second by Alderman Arnold. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Ryan Martin.
So Mr. Peterson is the owner of Lightning Broadband. They formerly provided broadband to rural and unserved areas via, I guess, cellular technology. And the way they would do this is they would put the technology on high points, you could then subscribe to their service. What's happened is CEMC with Cumberland Connect has put them out of business. They had an attachment on our 8th Avenue water tank, which you have the lease in your packet. And so Mr. Peterson's basically out of business now, and he's asking to terminate the lease. The problem is Section 10C of the lease requires a 1-year notice requirement. He's not operating. The lease is only $100 a month. He's asking if you all will waive that termination clause. Ms. Barty and I spoke about it. She doesn't see a legal issue with it, and so we recommend that you terminate the lease. And because I think it would have been, well, a year from whenever he told us, so I think it's November is when he put his notice in.
Discussion? Questions?
I support it.
I do too. Cumberland Electric has provided internet service out in areas that's never had internet service, so. Okay. Any other discussion? We're ready for vote. Anyone like to change their vote? Please record the votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
3.4, discuss and possible take action on the agreement of the Municipal Technical Advisory Service to conduct a water and a wastewater utility rate study. Let me get this right. A motion was made by Alderman Hubbard and a second by Alderman Green. Questions on this study?
Can we just do this?
No, sir. I mentioned it, and we had the rate study previously, the 2017 rate study. We had the presentation from them. I think it was in 2018. That's out. So this upcoming budget will be the last year of recommended rates that we have. So I had mentioned that we were getting MTAS back in, but you all have to approve the agreement for us to do that.
And they have a $1,500 increase over the last.
They did. It's one of those things when we looked at the invoice, because I think they charge, $200 an hour, and they had 170 hours involved in it. But the max that we paid was $3,500, so it's much cheaper than what we could get another consultant to do, certainly.
And I must admit, they've provided great service over the last 15, 20 years or so.
Not just for these studies.
Yeah.
Lots of other things too.
Yeah, exactly. So
How often do we have studies like this done?
I'm not sure when the previous one was done. Former city manager, Ms. Holt, had recommended it be done in 2017 initially because of all of the capital improvements that were being done on the wastewater system, the capital improvements that were needed to be done on the water system. Because what they do in this rate study is they evaluate what you've spent on capital and the debt you have, what you're going to spend on capital, and your future growth, and they can look at all of that and then come up with what your recommended rates need to be each year based on how that flows. It's been really helpful over the last 3 or 4 years.
And they do it for a 3-year period?
Yes.
Projecting for 3-year period?
They do.
So we're probably going to be doing it every 3 years.
I would, as long as we, with the debt that we have in the wastewater system, especially considering the conversation that we had earlier tonight on more debt that's coming, whether it be 13 million or 25 to 35, we're probably, in the growth that we're having, which we'll discuss next week, we're probably going to need to rely on them to help us come up with adequate rates, because you also get into an issue when you're dealing with enterprise funds when you have a negative change in your debt position for 2 years consecutively. The state can come in and really, you can get into trouble. And so we want to make sure that our rates are where they need to be, that the fund is going to be solvent, and we're where we're supposed to be.
Well, and just like you're saying, these enterprise funds are controlled a lot by the federal and state regulations around these. It's not, a lot of it's not our call.
We don't want to give a fight.
Yeah, we don't want them coming in and taking over.
No, I like that. That's one of the good bragging points about the city, you know.
Yes.
Being independent entity and enterprise.
Any other discussion? No other discussion, we're ready for a vote. Anyone like to change their vote? Please record the votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. 3.5, discuss and possible take action on an amendment in the engineering service contract for Griggs & Malone, Inc. in the amount of $8,500 for the Greenbrier Pump Station Replacement Project. The new contract amount will be $53,500. Motion made by Alderman Arnold and a second by Alderman Hubbard to discuss. Questions? No questions? Ready for a vote? Anyone like to change their vote? Please record the votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. 3.6, discuss and possible take action on a change order to the Martin Luther King Jr. Park Playground Improvement Contract with CNC Contracting, LLC, in order to reduce a portion of the sidewalk from 10 to 8 feet. The contract amount will remain the same. Motion made by Alderman Trotter and a second made by Alderman Green to discuss.
Some explanation.
Okay, explanation, Mr. Martin.
Short story. The grant was turned in April of 2018. In that time frame after that, we had an issue with the main pipe, the main water line for the splash pad. It had to be relocated. So the contract for CNC reads that it was a 10-foot sidewalk. That 10-foot sidewalk was going to cover that main line. So we went back to TDEC and we asked them to reduce the sidewalk from 10 to 8 foot to get it off of the main line. And whenever we done that, we were waiting on TDEC's response. Well, CNC's contract still read 10 foot. So I went to the site one day and they'd actually dug out for the 10-foot sidewalk and they started to frame it up. It was approximately 131 square feet of sidewalk at $7.07 a square feet for a total amount of $927 was the difference. And the reason why the contract price did not change is because the work that they had done exceeded the $927, so we just called it even.
Okay, other questions while he's at the mic? Thank you. Any other discussion? We're ready for a vote. Anyone like to change their vote? Please record the votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. 3.7, discuss and possible take action on an amendment to the Pyro Show contract for the 4th of July fireworks to include general obligation insurance changes. The amount of the contract will remain the same, $13,500. Motion made by Vice Mayor Harris and second by Alderman Gregg to discuss. Questions? Won't be long until the 4th of July.
I help the entity for the city, you know.
It is. These are good things, and they're going to happen this year. Any discussion? No discussion? We're ready for a vote. Anyone like to change their vote? Please record the votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. 3.8, discuss and possible take action on a 3-year contract extension with Thurman Campbell Group, PLC, of Clarksville, Tennessee, for the financial statement audit service. Motion made by Alderman Hubbard, a second by Alderman Green to discuss.
I recommend we keep them.
I do too.
They've given us great service. You know.
They've been excellent to work with. And I think Ms. Crockett would say the same thing. Any questions? No questions? We are ready for a vote. Anyone like to change their vote? Please record the votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. 3.9, State Form CT 0253, a report on the debt obligations, which reports on the $26,675,000 general obligation public improvement refunding bond, Series 2021, issued on March 11th, 2021. No action is required on this item. I will remind you of the meeting next week here, March 23rd at 5 p.m. Yes, sir.
Question. I meant to ask Mr. Martin when he was up there, are we on track planning this year for the splash pad to open?
We are.
On time?
We are.
I had some people ask, that's what I was.
We can't wait.
And that
That's a great question.
would be what? And probably around
Memorial Day weekend is what we usually target for that.
Then we're also targeting the playground to be complete on this phase.
Awesome. We'll have a ribbon cutting.
Will any of the rules or anything change at the splash pad due to COVID, or would it just be open like it was before? Don't know
Right
yet.
now, it's just.
Plan to.
We spoke to several different cities that kept their splash pads open last year.
And mainly because of the chemicals, that's the chlorine and the chemicals that's in the splash pad, it's one of the safest places to be. So we're ready to open it up, and, we're going to have social distancing as much as we can outside of the fence and inside the area. But the kids are gonna play. So.
Were there some cities that didn't close this past year?
Not that I'm aware of. Now, I'm sure there are, but just the ones that were surrounding us. There were some that were closed, yeah.
Okay. We look forward to Memorial Weekend in the city of Springfield. Mr. Martin, City Manager's report.
Thank you. You've already kind of mentioned two of those. Welcome to our new Assistant City Manager, Candace. And also reminder, next week, the topics that we have for the planning session are growth, mobile food service vehicles, and fiber internet. So those are the topics that you all submitted that we are going to talk about. We'll also recap our 2020 strategic plan. Encompassed in that growth discussion will be sort of what we talked about tonight. We'll talk about general fund infrastructure as well as utility fund infrastructure. I do want to acknowledge our wastewater treatment plant staff. Mr. Morse already gave them a nice shout out earlier, but we had our compliance and evaluation inspection from TDEC at the wastewater treatment plant. And as Mr. Morse said, they're doing a good job with what they have to work with. We had a good inspection report, and so we appreciate the work that they're doing out there. We're still working diligently on budget. We'll have that to you all in April. And then one bit of good news is we have added pickleball. We added pickleball courts outside at Garner Street last year, and now we've added pickleball inside the center. For those of you that don't know what pickleball is, it's like tennis. It's really popular among the senior population, and it's a growing game. And so Mr. Martin is always looking at expanding our offerings at Parks and Rec, and he's done that again, so we're appreciative of that.
Will there be some lessons for the people setting up here for pickleball?
Everybody that you will be teaching a class.
Why me? I'm a runner. I don't know about pickleball.
Former coach Greg Bell's one of the champions at pickleball.
Oh, that's right, he is.
He's a champion.
So if we go over,
He's a champion
Mr. Martin will do
pickleball
a demonstration.
He will,
Mr. Martin, we're all coming over tomorrow.
and we'll stream it.
No videos.
Okay. Mr. Hubbard, you had something?
Yes, I would just like to say to the citizens, okay, please take the vaccination when your time comes and dispel all of these crazy rumors that are floating around. We need to push toward immunity. That's the word I want to say.
Thank you.
And and also, since we dropped the mask, social distancing, please do that and be careful.
Mr. Martin.
The last thing I have on my list is to make a plea to the citizens. Springfield's looking kind of bad with litter. And so Middle Tennessee, frankly, everywhere is looking kind of bad. There are a couple of contributing factors to that. But we're doing the best that we can with our litter crews. We know that part of the reason that we see the litter that we see is because those that do community service litter pickup, whether it be because they're confined or because they've been sentenced to community service, all those things have been put on hold because of COVID. So, but it's really exposed the lack of care that people have for our area. So let's keep our area clean. I mean, we've gotten several complaints recently, so I just encourage everybody, let's care about our community and let's not litter.
Thank you. We're going to have a meeting tomorrow to talk about how we can do some things in the city of Springfield to clean up. So we'll be coming back to you, asking you to roll your sleeves up and volunteer. So stay tuned for that. Our meeting is adjourned.